Hi, I'm Jill Nichols. Thanks so much for joining me on these online painting classes. Let's get straight to painting. I'm going to get ready to paint. The first thing I'm going to do is put some form of lotion on my hands to create a barrier. Paintings can be quite harsh, as well as the mineral spirits. If you want, you can wear gloves too, especially if you're cleaning up. Gloves might be good. But in any case, you want to put a good barrier on yourself. We're going to go through a series of exercises for the beginner and refresher for those who might have taken a break for a long time. Today, we're going to take a walk in nature. There's nothing, no better teacher for color than nature. And I've already taken my walk, and I'm going to choose some of these items. Here I have yellow and purple, which, as we discover more about color, we'll realize these are complementary colors, meaning across from each other on the color wheel. And the color wheel is one of the exercises that I strongly recommend. And here we have blue and orange. These are also complementary colors. So as you see, nature has its own way of making some beautiful colors. Also, I've chosen a lot of different leaves. Here you'll see there's a dark green leaf and a bright green leaf and a leaf that's got some red in it. So when we say paint a leaf, it's not always going to be the same. And part of learning how to paint is learning those differences and those subtleties. So let's get started. Okay, so now we're ready to start painting our color walk. As I showed you earlier, I went on a short walk earlier, found some leaves, some flowers. I will be painting some of those. Also, if you live near the beach, you might want to go and find some beautiful sea glass, all sorts of different colors, shells. There's a beautiful little brown shell here. Anything you find that you want to paint. If it's hard for you to get out and walk, look for stuff around the house. So, for example, I have some beautiful bath salts here. I could also paint those. There's different blues and whites and greens. As you will see, even white is a color. White has many different tones to it. So I've put out my basic palette already. This is the basic beginner palette. I strongly recommend working with just a few colors to start. I put out my yellow. This is my cad yellow light, a cad yellow deep, and my warm red, which is a cad red light, my alizarin crimson, which is a deep cooler red, cerulean blue, ultramarine blue. And I've kept my earth tone separate again, my yellow ochre, my burnt sienna, my burnt umber. I've also put out two different whites. This way I can mix in two here. And I've saved room in the middle of the palette for mixing all my colors. The palette I'm using is disposable. It's a nice way to get started. I have many palettes. I have a glass palette under here that I use for my larger paintings. I have a wood palette that's part of my easel for traveling outside. But to get started, you'll find that this disposable easel palette is very convenient. This one happens to be gray. They come in white. Either one is fine. I use the gray tone because it shows me the colors as they might appear more on the painting itself. So I'm going to, here also you may not be able to see it in the bright light, I've gridded up 9 different rectangles here. Now you don't have to draw them, you could just start painting. I will be sure to label each one because I kind of got lucky and they were some attractive still lifes as well. So I might go back and use those. So it would be nice if I can refer back to this exercise and say, oh yeah, that's how I got that purple. So again, I just got lucky and have these complementary colors. I'm going to do this purple to start. Now, again, not all colors are the same. There's different hues. Hue is the basic color. So for example, this is a purple and this is a purple, and yet they're different. This one has a little pinker, this is deeper, different values, different hue, and we'll be discussing color more as we paint. So I'm going to take just a few things to get started. This is just a piece of paper, it can be a scrap piece of paper. Again, these are just exercises for our reference. I'm using an inexpensive brush. I'm using a more rectangular brush. My palette, and then I always like to use 2 different mineral spirits. I use the Gamsol because it's the most non-toxic. I have one for my dirty brush, one that I try to keep clean. If you're working in watercolor, the same thing goes. You always want to have 2, one for the dirty brush, one for the clean. If you don't keep your thinner clean, you'll start to get a muddy painting. So let's start with this beautiful deep purple. I am going to take some crimson, and now a lot of it's just guesswork. I've been painting a long time, so I might guess a little faster, but even for me, I'm just always experimenting, and that's part of the joy of painting, is just playing with the paint and not being in a big hurry. Just have patience and don't get annoyed with yourself. Now, I've noticed here I made this beautiful blue. It's nothing like this purple I want, but it is pretty much identical to this Hydrangea Blue that I also was going to do. So let's see, how close is that? That looks pretty darn close. Now, of course, there's different blues in here, but I can pick. And this will happen when I'm working on painting. I might come up with a color that I'm not looking for, but it works for a different place on the painting. That is great. That's less work for me. I've come up with it just having fun. So I'm going to put this Hydrangea Blue in the first box. Now on the paper it looks maybe a little darker. It will dry a little whiter, and I can put in a little bit more white too, just to brighten it up a little bit. Again, when you'll see there's different values in here. So there is that dark blue that I'm putting down. There's also the lighter blue. If I wanted to, I could even split this box, for example, and just add a little more white and paint over that one side to give myself that variety. No rules, okay? Just for fun. All right, so I've done the Hydrangea Blue. Now let me try to get that purple again. So what happened is I added a lot more blue for one thing, and maybe we need a little different blue. So I'm going to try a little bit of the ultramarine blue, and I'm going to take some of that crimson. And see if we can get close to that purple. Now, I purposely chose difficult colors to pick. You may find that there is no complete match to that paint. You know, we're going to get as close as we can in paint, but the purples especially are quite elusive. So I'm getting closer here. It's getting closer to the purple. Try a little bit of the cad red light. Let's see what happens. Again, I'm experimenting too, right along with you. So that kind of muddies it up. And now it's not any closer, it's further away. But so I'm going to just take this color and put it aside for now. And I'm going to, the other thing you want is to have paper towels or another palette knife to get the excess paint off the palette knife. So rather than pause right now, I'm just gonna do that. Clean this off again. Get that spot nice and clean. And I'm gonna go, so I know not to use the Cad Red light now. I do think this ultramarine was working. So let's try that. I'm not going to add much of the cerulean this time. And this is a hit and miss. This is fun, you know, and I'm looking as I mix, what other colors am I trying to get to right now? This also would work for the hydrangea. It's a little lighter, so I might just put that down on the other side. Okay, so that's a note to myself that the ultramarine blue actually works very well for that too. So let's keep adding a little bit more of this crimson. As you'll find in our complementary color exercise, there's 3 primaries, yellow, red, blue, and when you mix 2 of the primaries, you get secondary colors. Here I'm mixing blue and red, 2 primaries. Now, that is getting very close in hue. However, the value is very light because I added a lot of white to see what I was doing. So now I'm a little more sure that this is what I want. So I'm going to go in, add some more of the ultramarine blue. And you see it's getting too blue. That's okay. Means I just need to add more red. And there we go. I'm going to mix that really well and get that purple in there. Now as we move on, as you have more time painting, you'll find you can actually buy different hues that would match this purple closer. So it's still not getting close to that purple that I really want. So it's a nice purple. It's actually closer to this other purple. The other thing is, rather than that, keep mixing this white into this color. I'm going to put this white next to it. And then I can even take what's on my palette knife, not even that much, and add it into the white. I'll use less paint that way and get to my color faster. Otherwise, the white would have just disappeared in that bigger chunk of color. All right. So what I've come up with is this other purple, really, this periwinkle, this impatient purple. It's pretty close. I could add a little bit more red. Let me get some more crimson out on my palette. Okay, so I found the alizarin crimson hiding behind my thinner jar. And now I've found another palette knife while I was paused. I'm going to use that. You really want to get 2 palette knives. It really helps save paint. And so I have this beautiful lavender. Now, do I have anything from my nature walk that matches that? Let's see how we're doing here. We're close. There's a little more red in that. So let me add just a touch of the crimson. Now crimson is a very intense color, So I want to go really, really carefully with that, not add too much in at a time. Again, we're not in a hurry here. Painting is a very meditative process. If you let it be, you can get lost and find yourself and find some joy and just have fun, even just mixing colors. As you see, I'm adding it very slowly. So you can see it's a little shift from that. Still not getting exactly where I want to be. So I'm going to leave that beautiful lavender color. Again, I might use it for something. There's nothing that I'm seeing from my nature work offhand, but it's such a beautiful color. I would probably, I'm just going to save it in case I can use it for something. Let me try by starting, see what happens if I start with the cerulean blue and the crimson. Okay. All right. Some more white out. You'll find a list of supplies on my website. I'm putting together several different packages, all different budgets, all different qualities. There's some beautiful paints out there that are not going to break the bank, that really work well and would be great for someone just starting out. So I'm going to mix this in. And see if we're getting any closer to these two purples. Okay, I'm going to put these next to each other here on my palette. I'm going to add a little more crimson. Also, if you refer to your color palette that we did the other day, that might help discover the colors. So that's a little closer, I think. Still not getting that brilliant. Let me see if I add just a little bit of this, what happens. This is that cad yellow. Deep. Again, it grays it out a little bit. So that's not working. That's a beautiful color. I'll save it for something else. Use my paper towel, clean off my... Now, excuse me, one of the reasons that grayed out on me is that yellow and purple are complementary. When you put the colors next to each other, it makes it more vibrant, more alive. But when you mix those two colors together, you get more neutralized. So, can I get any closer to this? Maybe not with these particular hues. So I'm going to say, I'm going to get the excess Hydrangea Blue off my brush. And I'm going to mix in a little bit more white into this. Now what I could try doing is add just a touch of the cerulean blue to this. So I have the ultramarine blue, the cerulean blue, touch of the crimson. So we have two blues and two reds to play around with to get our purples. And that's all I'm doing here. So as you can see, that's still a little blue. So what happens if I add some of that blue to this lavender? Nope, I was closer over here before I used that cerulean blue. But I'm pushing it. I'm experimenting. I'm learning, and I'm always learning when I'm mixing colors. Who knows what I'll come up with? Sometimes just slight variations are very exciting. So for this one, I am going to say with these paints, these particular paints, this is about as close as I'm going to get. I can add a little bit of white to get closer to value in that. So let me put more white out. And as you see, I'm using a big tube of white. You're going to go through more white than anything. So buy yourself a big tube of white. Let me see if I can just push that a little bit closer to pink. Just a little. Let's see what happens. I just want to take a look. What happens when we just take the crimson? Oh, there's a little blue on my thing. But you see we get this beautiful bright pink. So that might be a little bit closer to that other one. Let's see. So now I can take a little bit of that lavender, just add it in ever so little bit at a time, ever so slightly. I'm getting some paints mixed. I'm going to take my two palette knives. Notice how I'm using the knife both sides, and I'm mixing it like this. You know, play around with that palette knife and try to get that paint mixed up. So now it's gone too light on me. So I'm going to add some more of this lavender in and a touch more of that crimson. And this is how you do it. You just go back and forth, taking your time, trying to get as close to that color as possible. Again, depending on the paint, you may or may not be able to get identical to that color, which is one of the reasons I chose these purple flowers, because the purples of all colors are tough. So I'm going to just say that's about as close as I'm going to get. I'm going to put that down on my paper. And again, this is just an exercise. Don't worry about staying in the box, but it is a good way to kind of, I'm using a straight brush here. This is really good for keeping along a line. And we'll get into brush discussion more later. Right now, I just want to focus on the color. So there we've got hydrangea and we've got our impatient. I have a petunia here too, while we're at it. So I have two petunias. One, this beautiful light pink, one this deep purple. So let's see if we can get those petunias to work for us a little bit more. So let me go back to this beautiful deep purple. I see more of a red vibration in there. So I'm going to take this deep purple we mixed up before and add some more crimson into that. I can also again start with the crimson. I can use this base over here. And again, because I'm limiting myself to hues, I'm not going to get it exactly, but we'll get close. So value-wise, this still looks lighter to me. Also, when we're painting this purple petunia, we're going to use different values of the same color. I'm going to gather these up together. Kind of clean off my palette, because now I'm totally confused and I want to start completely fresh. And mixing all those together, I'm going to get some beautiful color, which again I can save till later. So that makes this really beautiful lavender. That's the two blues and the two reds together. So let's try this again. I'm going to start with just the crimson and some white. Not too much white because this is a darker value. Notice the two flowers next to each other, how one's really dark, one's really light. Okay. Now, I'm going to add the two blues in separately. I'm going to make two puddles of this, and then we can decide together which of those blues work best. I've already ruled out the cad red light, so I know that the red I want to work with is that crimson. So here's the crimson with just white. Now, if I take cerulean, again, I cleaned my palette knife, went in, dipped it clean. Let's see what we do here. Okay. That's not bad. It's not bad. That might be what we go with. But before we decide for sure, let's leave that alone. We know that that's cerulean with the crimson. Now I'm going to start again with just the crimson. Take some clean white. And mix those together. Now you can see I added a little bit more white this time. We're actually getting closer to a pink. I think we'll be okay because that ultramarine blue is pretty dark. And if so, if it's too light, I can always add more. Of the crimson. Now, I'm going to clean my knife. You can see how many variations of beautiful colors I'm getting. If we were painting this as a still life, I would save all these variations and use all of them, because there's going to be darks and lights. So now I'm going to mix that in. And I think they're pretty close, actually. But I think this one's vibrating a little bit more. So to me, it's closer to that other purple. It's a little more lively. So I'm going to use that one. I'm going to dip my brush now in the dirty thinner, swish it around. I never want to leave my brushes in the thinner. That would ruin my brushes. So I just swish them. I wipe off the excess paint first, and then as I go, I keep wiping it in the paper towel or rag. I do use rags, you know, all those clothes that instead of taking them to Goodwill or something, some of them make great rags, like especially old t-shirts. So I'm going to take this purple here and put that in my third box. That's going to be, now again, it's a little dark, so I'm going to just add a little bit of white so we can see that color a little bit better. And I'm not going to be too crazy about keeping in the lines, but again, this is just for our reference. Okay, so there's the purple, dark purple petunia. Now, light. This looks like a pink. So let's try just with starting again with the white. Now this white has gotten a little contaminated. Let me just start with that and see what happens, because we know it's just reds and blues in there, which is going to be okay to have in this pink. I'm going to take a touch of that crimson again, very little amount. I can always add, but otherwise I have to keep putting out white paint and mixing it up, and before you know it, I've gone through a lot of paint. So just by adding and slowly getting what I need. So still a little lighter. So I'm just going to keep slowly adding. I think we're going to get here with just the crimson and the white. Not a whole lot of blue in here. All right, that's pretty darn close. Pretty darn close. How are we doing? Still looks a lot lighter. Can add some more of the crimson. Getting a little closer in value. This is like the highlights in there. But I'll go for more of the mid-tone. Pretty darn close right there. That really matches that highlight. I could keep pushing it. Just to show you, I will. Just to give you a thought of how it will get purer, deeper. Okay. Again, not an exact match, but close enough. Again, I'm going to squish my brush in the dirty, get rid of any excess paint before I do it, and then I'm wiping my brush on the rag, getting rid of, and that's just in the dirty. And I'm just going to quickly dip into my clean and do it again, and you'll see there's still stuff in there. But now my brush should be nice and clean, and I can go right in. Especially working with a light pink, you want it to be nice and pure and clean. So now I'm just going to put that pink right in this rectangle here. Okay, so I'm going to just take a second and quickly label these. Hydrangea Blue, and then we had, see, I'm already forgetting, Impatient Purple, Petunia Purple, and Petunia Pink. So you see just these slight variations of those different colors. So the crimson and white. All right, so before you get too far, make a note, because it's very easy to forget. And then, especially when you're working on a painting, you want to at least take a photo of your palette, take a photo of the paint you're using. And if you can, do something like this on the side and make notes for yourself so you know how to go back and get that exact color. Because sometimes we completely forget, and I do too, and it takes me a while sometimes to get back to those colors. Because you've already done the work, why do it twice? Okay, so now I'm going to shift over to some different colors. I'm going to clean all of these up. I might even choose a different piece of palette paper just to mix different colors. We'll see. So I want to keep these colors pure, especially with flower colors. you want them nice and pure. They start mixing, they get muddy looking. So I'm just going to put these aside. I'm going to save them. I save old jars, like from face cream and stuff. And I'll put these paints, if I'm not going to use them today, I will put them in a jar and they'll stay for a few days. A little trick too, if you got room in your freezer, if you put your paints in your freezer, they last a lot longer. Otherwise, oils take a little while to dry, but you'll find they stiffen up even in one day. So you really don't want to keep them out. Another way I'll do it is if I was going to take a long break, I could cover this all with wax paper or another piece of the palette paper. And that would, I've got some water here from my flowers. I'm going to blot that up. Because water and oil do not mix. Speaking of which, I don't recommend the oils mixed with water. If you don't want to use thinner, I would recommend using acrylics instead. You'll have a lot better results with that. So one more of these to put over here. And I'm going to get this ready for a whole different set of colors. So I want it pretty clean, or to shift to a different paper. So I can just kind of wipe this off. So this has a nice wax coating, so I can get pretty clean on this. And I'll break down and use another paper towel. I'm using these really nice shop towels. Get them in the hardware section. They're more absorbent. They act more like a rag. They last a little bit longer. Or the Viva paper towels are really good too. They're softer. Not as critical for these exercises, but as you get into painting, you might find that you want those. Okay, cleaning my palette nice. And it's good to pause and get yourself back to square one once in a while you're painting, just to keep yourself from getting muddy. If you find that it's time for a break, take a break. This isn't going to go anywhere. The oils won't dry that quickly. If you want to take a lunch break or half hour, hour break, even 2 or 3. Okay, so now I'm going to do the yellow, which is exactly why I wanted this really clean, because yellow, again, is complementary to lavender, and if I pick up any of the lavender, it's going to get rid of that pure yellow. So I'm going to get this really clean over here. Okay, so again, I'm going to put out some fresh white. Now I'm going to take this beautiful begonia, this beautiful, bright, sunny summer yellow begonia, and that is pretty right on to this cad yellow light. So there's not a whole lot of guessing there. I'm going to take some white, mix that into that yellow. Okay, bingo. So I'm going to take, again, I'm going to want to make sure my brush is extremely clean. I could also use a different brush. This one is good for this exercise, so I'm just going to really clean it off. I'd have to do it at the end of the day anyway, so again, I'm blotting the excess before I put it in the thinner. I want it coming out clean. And I'm going to also, while I'm at it, I'm just cleaning my brush off. I managed to make a mess of it. So now I'm going to take this beautiful begonia yellow and put it here. All right. So then I have a second begonia here, which is a yellowish orange. It's beautiful. It's got yellow in it, and it has red. So the question is, what red is that? I have a feeling it's the crimson rather than the cad red light. And I think we could probably use the cad deep for this. Probably a combination. So I can probably take this petunia yellow. And I'm going to add a little bit. Oops, there was a little blue in there. I just saw it in the nick of time. I'm going to take some clean cad yellow, put it next to it. I'm not mixing it. I'm just taking a little bit and mixing that in there. Let's see how we're doing here. So I could probably add a little bit more. Again, slowly adding the more intense color in. And I think we're getting pretty close there. The tip of my, maybe just a little bit more. There we go, bingo. Yep. There we go. So I'm going to, now I've got the yellow in this brush, so that's going to add in more yellow. Could probably add a touch more of this in, so I don't have to clean my brush in this case, because yellow's in there. And that's right on. So now I can put that here. And that's our other begonia. Notice these are both yellows, but the difference in those two yellows. Okay, now we've got our purples and our yellows. Let's shift over. Well, actually, before I shift over completely, while I'm at it, I'm going to do the Tigerlily. So here we have our Tigerlily, and you can see it's a little deeper orange, slightly different hue than the begonia. So I'm going to add a little more of the yellow deep. And what is that red in there? I think that's, to me, that looks closer to the crimson. So I can clean off this palette knife. I'll stick this in here for now so I have my hands to work with. A little more of that, and I've cleaned off my other palette knife so I can go in and get a little crimson. Now that's a lot. I'm going to move some of that over. Again, it's very intense. And this time I'm going to use my brush to mix it. Now, how are we doing? That looks right on. So I'm going to put that right here in this rectangle. That's our Tigerlily. Orange. Now, it's a little dry, so I'm just going to quickly dip into that clean to wet it up a little bit, so to extend out this paint here. You'll find there's two ways to make the paint move a little easier. Either the mineral spirits, which is probably the best thing just to start out, and linseed oil or walnut oil. There's different kinds of oils, and that gets, it's another conversation we'll have later on, but you'll find that just using the mineral spirits for now, as long as you don't use too much, will be fine. Okay, so there we go. I'm going to label these quickly. Tigerlily and crimson and the Cad Yellow Deep. And this was just the Cad Yellow and Deep. I did not wind up adding any of the crimson into that. So here you can see there's quite a difference in those two. So now we have two more colors from our walk. Let's get into some green. We have these different leaves. So notice how different each of these are. Let's see, let's get this one off of here. Okay. So let's mix. For this exercise, we're going to do these two greens, the really dark green and the light green. Okay, and again, wipe that off. Now we're going to take two primaries to make greens, and those primaries are yellow and blue. So I've got a little bit of this on here. This is the mix of the two yellows. So what the heck, I'm going to just put that right there. Take some of this ultramarine blue and see what we get, because I'm curious. Okay, that's pretty good right off the bat. Let's see, put them next to each other. Pretty darn good. So I'm just going to take that. It's mostly on my palette knife. It's just a little bit, but you know what? We only need a little bit for this. So we're just going to take that, put that there. Nice deep green. So that was the two yellows and ultramarine blue. Now, how do we get this lighter yellow? My guess is it's not going to have any Cad Yellow Deep in it. It's probably we're going to take our lighter yellow, the Cad Yellow Light. And you know what? Just for the heck of it, I'm going to try just the cerulean. Let's see what happens when we mix those two together. That's a nice bright green. What a beautiful bright green that is. Is that what we need there? It's probably just a little too bright for that leaf. So I can probably just kind of go in here to that other mixture, and I can add a little bit of that. That's pretty darn close. So that was the lighter yellow with the two blues. So you can see, just by using just these several colors, we can get a lot of variation. Okay, and that ends our color walk for today. I hope you all have a good color walk, and I'll see you back here soon.